Thanks for downloading this podcast. It's for personal use only and must not be broadcast, reproduced, or used in any form without permission.
Tell your friends they can get their own copy wherever they get their podcasts.
The world's longest running motorsport magazine show, Midweek Motorsport. News, features, special guests, and analysis from the experts. Formula One, sports car and endurance racing, rallying, touring cars and bikes. If it has wheels and an engine, and they keep score, it's on Midweek Motorsport.
Hello everybody and welcome to Midweek Motorsport. It is Series 18, would you believe it? Series 18, and this is episode 1. It's a midnight motorsport for Nick Damon and John Hindhaugh here in Dubai. But it is 8 o'clock back in the UK, well, just after 8 o'clock back in the UK, where Tim Gray is back with us. Hello, Tim, up in London, and on a packed programme tonight we have what?
I'm actually wondering whether or not I am even in London.
You've been travelling a lot, haven't you?
Yesterday I went to 2 racetracks that aren't racetracks.
Ooh. Well, knowing where you were, did you go to Riverside?
No.
Ooh, where did you go then?
I went to Albert Park and then to Long Beach.
Ah.
Now, obviously,
Right.
Albert Park is a little bit more like a racetrack because they've started building grandstands. We're about a week into the build there. Mm-hmm. And Long Beach is very much public roads, although I do notice some brand new tarmac on part of the track road.
They keep doing that. Yeah, they keep doing that at Long Beach. They sort of
Just
have
doing bits of it.
It's a fourth road bridge kind of approach to it. They keep doing bits of it at various different times. It's not exactly go back to the start again, but
they've
it's
also
a bit more
got
sort of piecemeal.
cones up still on the fountain where whoever it was parked themselves last year in the IndyCar race. 2
purple cars, one in the IndyCar race and one in the IMSA race, if I remember.
That's right.
Rightly.
So they need to repair some concrete there.
Anyway, on a packed programme tonight, for the first of the new series as well, we have what?
I'll be saying Happy New Year a lot.
I'm surprised you haven't said it already, to be honest.
And Happy New Year to you, Nick Damon.
Happy New Year, Tim. Happy New Year to all our glorious listeners.
Oh, Happy New Year, listener. Yes, Happy New Year to everyone then. Nick Damon will be joining us. He'll be talking Formula One. He'll also be previewing something that's happening this weekend. More of that later. In fact, I think he'll be talking about 3 things that are happening this weekend. But he might not know that he's talking about 3 things that are happening this weekend yet.
He's going to be talking about some stuff that was announced earlier on today as well. Some stuff that was announced
we've got some bits
a couple of weeks ago.
And we've got a big interview.
We have, with a bit of luck and a fair wind, and frankly we are stretching technology. Parker
No,
Thompson.
we're not. We do this all the time.
Yeah, I love your boundless, boyish enthusiasm, Tim.
That's massively overconfident, sorry.
Parker Thompson.
Yeah, just as the link from Dubai starts breaking up again, I know.
Well, there you go, you see. Parker Thompson won the, what was the Visit Cayman Islands Porsche Carrera Cup in the United States.
Well, North America. They do race in Canada,
North America.
remember, twice.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, very good point. And once, actually, they didn't go to CTMP.
They had 2 races in Toronto.
Well, 1.5, actually.
Okay, yes.
I know I'm splitting hairs, but it's factually correct. Parker, it's fair to say, has not had an easy ride to progress his career. We'll be talking about that, and it does, however, have a happy ending, which is great news. One thing I do want to say, Tim, tonight is, I know it's been a while since we've been on, and hello to everybody who's been waiting patiently.
And Happy New Year to them as well, yeah.
All of them. The inordinate amount of particularly IMSA news. We've got a couple of things to talk about, a lot of things to talk about sports car tonight. Don't think we are forgetting IMSA sports cars, because Shay will be with us to help us catch up with everything next Wednesday.
Happy birthday.
I'm
birthday,
disappointed she's
Shay.
not with us tonight on her birthday.
It's a birthday. It's a birthday. You're allowed to be off on your birthday. That's
Was
fine.
I off on my birthday?
Was I off on my birthday? I'm never off on my
Was
birthday.
I off on my birthday?
Yes, you were, Nick. Absolutely, you were.
Yes, you were
Yeah.
aware. You were aware, Holly, man. Do you not remember? Do you remember?
Yeah, well, I was thinking racist.
Yes, yeah. At Specutainment, hello to Kevin, who is catching up tonight, or at least on the archive. Good to have the company of all of you who are listening. Hello to Marcus P, Sarah Rigby, who is tuned in this evening. She'll be very excited about some of the WEC news, and indeed the Dubai 24-hour news that we have. Or we'll be talking Ferrari as well later on this evening. At Specutainment, we'll do our best to pick those up as we go. As Tim mentioned, we're spread to the four winds, or at least between London and Dubai this evening. In fact, we're already, of course, at the Thursday morning here.
And also in Albert Park, where I was yesterday, and then travelled backwards in time to Long Beach.
I'm sure there's a very good financial reason for this, but why did you come back via America?
Why not?
Oh, well, okay. So instead of going around the world, you did two half. You
Yes.
didn't do a full round
I
the
haven't
world.
done a full round the world.
Okay. Shall we move on to the top story?
I find I don't get jet lagged if I go via the States.
Really? Interesting. Jet lag is just a state of mind. If you don't accept it, you don't get it. Shall we move on to the... It's true. Shall we move on to the top story?
All the latest motorsport news from around the world. Midweek Motorsport.
And we're going to start with some sports car news.
Are we?
We are, because this morning the entry list for this year's FIA World Endurance Championship was unveiled, and it doesn't include a car that hasn't been built or homologated yet.
Well, yes, I presume you are talking about the Isetta Fraschini.
I
that,
am
Vector
indeed,
Sport
yes. The
were
Vector
meant
Sport
to be.
Isetta
Does that come with extra
Fraschini.
parmesan?
Stop it. Stop it. Listen,
There's a man
listen.
standing over it with a giant pepper grinder. Or they would be if it existed.
Hello to Dave Alcock, by the way, who's tuning in tonight, and along with many of you at Specutainment. Look, Isetta Fraschini have a fantastic history of building cars.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, they changed the shape and the ideology of racing cars in Europe back in the late 20s and the 1930s. They were the first people who went to small, nimble cars with their racing cars. If you don't believe me, go and look it up.
I absolutely believe you. But I don't believe that this car exists.
Well, it is and it isn't, because there is a shell of a car. There is a chassis of the car. It's been delivered to Vector. There's been socials on that. But you're right, Tim. As a complete car, the Isetta Fraschini racing car doesn't exist. Now, Vector and IF, much easier, isn't it? Let's be honest, have both said today that their partnership is very strong. It continues, and that whilst, of course, they're disappointed that they haven't got a full season entry to the FIA WEC, therefore guaranteeing them a spot at Le Mans, people that I've spoken to who are very close to the project and who know far more about it than I do have said the car would not have been ready for Sebring, and possibly not even for round 2 at Portimao, isn't it? Is it Portimao Spas?
No, Portimao's
round,
much
is it
later.
Portimao Spas?
Round
Anyway,
2. Oh, yeah, Portimao is round 2, yes.
Yes, yeah.
Except
So-
on the FIA website where it goes Sebring, Le Mans, Monza, Fuji, Portimao, Fuji, Bahrain, Spa, by
That's last
obviously putting them in
think.
the wrong order.
Yes, are they alphabetical or something?
No, because Sebring's still first.
Well,
Then
anyway.
Fuji comes fourth, and Bahrain is
anyway.
nearly at the end. So, no, they're not.
So, anyway, the point is that the IF car with Vector wouldn't have been ready for certainly the first round and possibly the second round as well. What they're going to do is they're going to continue developing and refining the car, and the opportunity will be there, they say, for some wildcard entries towards the end of the season. And they are hoping for that with a view to a full season entry in 2024. Now, they will have to build some road cars. That's part of the regulations.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people don't like that. I know a lot of people who, again, know far more about this than I do, don't like that. I'm not saying whether I do or I don't like it. What I'm saying is those are the current regulations. You have to be a road car manufacturer. Isotta Fraschini has not built a series, what anybody could consider a series production road car, since the early 1930s. I'm loving seeing that brand being brought back like a phoenix from the flame. They've always continued, by the way. They've been building marine engines and still do. In fact, some very clever marine engines as well. However, they're going to have to build some road cars. So interesting that hasn't been given an entry. And now you're going to want to talk about a car that has been given an entry, aren't you?
Yes, I am, because this wasn't given an entry last season for exactly the same reason, in that it didn't exist and hadn't been homologated. And this is the Van Wall, which again is a brand which has a massive history in producing some very successful race cars.
This is slightly different for a couple of reasons. One of which, there is still quite a considerable and serious legal battle about whether Colin Collis, for it is he who is behind this, what is called Floyd Van Wall Racing Team, FVRT, and their Van Wall Van der Velde racing car, as they are calling it. There are still some quite heated and serious discussions going on through solicitors, therefore getting expensive, I would assume, about whether Colin even has the rights to use that name. Let's put that to one side. I'm sure the solicitors won't want to hear me say that, but let's put that to one side for the moment. And again, consider the fact that Van Wall and the Van der Velde organisation never produced road cars, even when they were producing race cars. So there will, again, need to be some road cars produced. It's the rules, whether you like it or not. Don't blame me about this. The rules are road cars have to be produced. Doesn't have to be the same as the race car. You just have to have an original equipment manufacturer as defined by the ACO and as recognised by the ACO building road cars to have a Le Mans hypercar entry. Now, there's nothing to stop them doing that, of course. And I do note that on the release today, there was a note against that car that says subject to homologation. The car does exist. It has been testing. Jacques Villeneuve's been involved with it, along with a few other people. And that car apparently has clocked up some quite impressive testing mileage. But it has not been homologated yet. It hasn't been presented to the ACO as an entity. And presumably it will also have to fulfill the part of the regulations about road cars. Nick Damon.
Yeah, but then again, there's a vast number of cars that haven't got homologation. That includes Cadillac, that includes Porsche, that includes all the Porsches. Interestingly, the Glickenhaus car is in, but has subject to receipt of the license, as does the Peugeot cars. And it's a weird one, actually. The Ferraris, the two new Ferraris, are entry under Article 3.3.3. What's that?
3.3.3 is the financial regulations that involves paying the entry fees. So they haven't yet paid their entry fees for that. basically, if you pay your entry fees and you didn't get an entry, you do get your money back, bar €1,000 for the administration. But 3.3.3, as far as I'm aware, looking at what I've seen on the FIA site, get me.
It's good little earner, isn't it? €1,000 just for failing to process something. Also, apparently, by the way, the Works Porsche team hasn't paid their entry fee either.
Well, and that's fine. Now,
do you think they accidentally paid the LMGTE Pro fee and not the hypercar fee, which I'd imagine is a lot higher?
The hypercar fee last year was €349,000 for an entry, plus I think €39,000 for each entry. Then it was €14,000 paid in advance for technical.
Seriously, it's €349,000
for each manufacturer. Yes,
that's more than F1. The only team paying more than that is Red Bull. None of the other teams are paying more than that for their entry.
This is to register yourself as a manufacturer, and then you pay for each car on top of that, and then you pay for scrutineering and fuel, some of which has to be paid in advance, and that doesn't include Le Mans, by the way, and that's last year's numbers that I've just quoted you. So I think it was, I feel it was 200, nearly 200, or just over €200,000 for a GTE registration for last year. It's far more difficult to find those numbers for this year. I've had a scroll through though. I hope you're impressed with that. I've just been sitting around doing nothing today.
Before we move away too far from the Van Wall, we have 3 drivers in that. Now, you mentioned Jacques Villeneuve, who, remember, has already won the Indy 500 and the Monaco Grand Prix. So.
Ooh. No, he's won the other one, which is the Formula 1 Championship. He's not won the Monaco.
I see. Esteban Guerrieri and Tom Dillman will be his teammates.
Yep.
We already knew who the Porsche drivers were going to be, didn't we?
We knew who they were. We now know how they're allocated in the cars.
So Dane Cameron, Michael Christensen, Fred McAvecchi are on the 5 car, and Kevin Estre, Andre Lotterer and Laurence Vantour are in the 6. Ferrari have also allocated drivers to cars.
Yeah, this was quite an interesting sort of preempting of this entry list, because this came out, I think, yesterday, wasn't it? Nick is nodding.
Tuesday, because we are Thursday.
Oh, yes, good point. You have a very good point. I have no.
Who? Where?
Where? What? When? Yes, I know. And they have split up as what, Tim?
Alessandro Pierguidi and James Collado stay together as they were in GTE before, and are joined by Antonio Giovinazzi, which, how long ago did we predict that was going to happen, Nick?
Sort of when he left Alfa Romeo last year, wasn't it?
End of 2021.
Indeed.
Antonio Fuoco, Miguel Molina, Nicholas Nielsen are in the 51.
Yeah. Is anybody surprised that there's a couple of names that aren't there? Sam Bird, not there, Nick?
Well, Sam was already slightly out of favour, wasn't he? He kind of moved down from the GTE Pro to favoured AM professional, effectively.
Remember that he had all those Formula E clashes over the last 2 seasons.
There is a new Ferrari GT car as well. Let's not forget. So some of the Ferrari drivers are going to be working on that, including now who was it?
You're thinking of GT3. In GTE, they're still running the 488.
Oh yes, good point. You're absolutely right. But there's a 296 still being developed and just about going out to its.
Yeah, but that's never come a GTE. GTE is dead.
Yeah,
that way we're going.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about GTE yet. We're still on hypercars.
Okay,
Cadillac, we knew who their drivers were, didn't we? Glickenhaus just have 1 car this year, and currently only 1 driver, Romain Dumas.
Yeah, I think the ACO will be looking to Jim Glickenhaus and Scuderi Cameron Glickenhaus to actually do a full season this year. That's no disrespect to Jim, but they've committed to a full season in the past and not for a variety of reasons, not being able to do it.
It's interesting. They didn't do a full season when they had a chance of getting podiums every week, or sorry, every event. Why would they do a full season now when they're going to be, theoretically, if things don't go brilliantly, ninth?
Well, one reason is because they have a customer who wants an entry for Le Mans. And obviously, as a WEC full season entrant, you get one entry. You're also allowed to apply to the selection committee for Le Mans for a second entry. And when we're talking about customer entries, we should talk about the two 963 Porsches. And that's Jota Sport and Proton Competition. Their cars may not be ready for, well, certainly Thomas Laudenbach, the man at the head of Porsche Motorsport, said not until the end of April. That has been described as ambitious. That would leave them out of, well, with their American teams as well, that would leave them out of Daytona, Sebring, Portimao, possibly Spa.
Spa is in April, so it would leave them out of Spa.
Yeah. Getting a brand new car and taking it to test day in Le Mans, it's not out of the question. The ACO will have data because there are other Porsches running. Whether that's a possibility to happen, I don't know. There's a couple of other things in play as well, apparently with Penske and how they feel about competition, about customer cars going to Le Mans. So we'll have to see about that and see when those cars turn up. All I can tell you is everybody at Porsche Motorsport is working flat out to get those cars to all of the customers, both in the WEC and indeed to the IMSA competitors as well. In fairness, I know we're talking about WEC. That doesn't help the IMSA competitors either, because that takes them into an area where potentially their first race could be on the streets of Long Beach, which is somewhat unlikely, isn't it, really? Let's be honest. So they'll be pushed further into the IMSA season as well. Global issues with supply being slated by all of the manufacturer teams about what slowed them down. Porsche, of course, the ones who are committed to the factory entries and the customer entries this year. However, two teams that we've talked about there, Tim, Jota and Vector, who we won't see at the start of the season in WEC, have got LMP2 entries, and it's an interesting LMP2 entry, isn't it?
They're not alone in having LMP2 entries, because WRT, Alpine, United, Prema, Iron Dames, no, not Iron Dames.
Well, Prema, yes.
Prema, I mentioned.
Inter Europol is the other one you were looking for.
Europol was the other one I was looking for. Have all got teams as well, which makes 11 in total, if you bear in mind that 4 of them have got 2 cars.
WRT, Prema, United, Alpine all have 2.
Yeah.
Jota, Inter Europol, Vector have 1. I think that's a decent entry for a category that is nearing the end of its life, according to the ACO in terms of WEC. Nick is not so sure. He thought there'd be more.
Well, the point about it is there are over 100 Oracle 07 chassis out there. I mean, a couple have been written off, but there's a huge number. The value is amortized down to nothing. Therefore, it makes a very cost-effective racing car, and people know how to run it. People know how to. There's this massive spares package. It becomes a really attractive thing, and most importantly, it's the fastest and only huge downforce option for a gentleman driver.
Don't disagree with any of that. I'll tell you now. Information coming out of the selection committee is that there were 11 entries for LMP2. They've all been fulfilled. So 11 wanted. 11 have been granted. I think that's pretty good. There'll be more for Le Mans because there's some extra guaranteed entries, although there's been a slight change in the regulations this year. You can't just stack up entry and entry and entry and entry. I think it's 2, the maximum guaranteed entries that you can be given. You can't as well swap entries between classes and between teams, although that's, as we know, is very difficult to police, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, it's, what is a team? really. You know, and if you're a team from a different continent and you want to use European engineers, mechanics, software engineers, the base, the cars, you know, who's going to how can you say what's what and what's not, and the sponsors and the naming rights and everything else. Yeah, I mean, it's very grey.
The name of the team
I've
has
got
to be
an
the
entry
same.
for Le Mans, but I want you to run it for me, and I want your sponsors to pay for it.
Yes, but it has to stay in your name, Tim.
Only on the entry list.
Yes, but that's all that matters because that's what's going to be above the garage. So it's still going to be Tim Gray Racing. It can't be
Yes, but it's going to
Damon
be
Racing.
Hindhoff, Damon, Coca-Cola, Tim Gray Racing.
All right. Okay, is it?
Tim Gray, powered by Hindhoff.
That's a scary thought in itself.
Very much so.
I mean,
any more on LMP2, or do we move on to GTE AM? Which
there'll be more at Le Mans. What happens?
I predict
A riot?
20 P2s at Le Mans.
Ooh, okay, write that down somewhere, somebody.
How many are we allowed? 60 in total.
What happens when LMP2 goes away is a conversation for another day, and I do think we're moving into a dangerous area where potentially there's only one class of prototype, because I can't see LMP3 being acceptable for Le Mans and the WEC. Hey, I might be proved wrong. There are non-pro drivers and pro drivers with career aspirations who need somewhere to make a career, who cannot get into a hypercar or don't want to get into a hypercar, and also don't want to race GT3s at Le Mans. I'm going to leave that hanging. Let's move on to GTE AM. No GTE Pro, of course, this year. That wound up at the end of the year. I tweeted earlier on today, yesterday where I am, today where you are, Tim, a bumper 14 entries with 4 manufacturers represented. How do we feel about GTE AM, Tim?
Well, it's more entries than last year, but only just. When you bear in mind that this is actually replacing Pro as well as AM, there are fewer.
How many
GTE
pros were there
cars.
last year?
3.
I think 4, weren't there?
3 did
2 Ferraris, 2
season.
Porsches.
I don't know.
I think 2 Ferraris, 2.
There was some.
In total, you had 17
5,
last year, and this you've got a total of 14.
I think this is reasonable. We've got a single Corvette, 3 Aston Martins, 4 Ferraris, and 6 Porsches. Again, I expect there will be more at Le Mans for essentially the last hurrah of these cars. These cars are great cars. We will miss these cars. And I'm going to say it again. I've said it before. I think it's a mistake to lose these cars from this level of competition. As I said about LMP2, there are gentlemen drivers who want to drive these cars entirely because they're not GT3s, entirely because they don't have the driver aids of ABS in particular, entirely because they are ridiculously quick through the corners because of the downforce and the amount of commitment that you had to do. You stick a pin in, not sure who's going to win it, but if you can get to a WEC race this year, and I appreciate the problems with getting tickets for Le Mans, although whisper it, I expect there will be tickets available on the door. If for nothing else, never mind all the new cars at the front of the field, the swan song of GTE in this particular category is worth going to see.
But there are teams missing because, as I say, we're down from 17 to 14, and that 14 includes 1 or 2 cars which were in, well, not 2 cars, but 2 teams that were in LMP2 last year.
Yep.
So there's quite a few people who have just gone missing completely.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we have the works Ferraris being hypercars now rather than AF Corsa GTEs, but there are still 4 AF Corsa GTEs if you include the fact that Richard Mille Racing is now an AF Corsa entry.
Well, Ferrari have never had a works GT team. If they did, it would look much like EF, but they haven't had that.
Yes.
They've co-opted a lot of their GT drivers into the hypercars. They've got some of their other GT drivers developing the GT3 car, the new 296. So there's still plenty of factory involvement there. Aston Martin obviously ceased their factory race program, but they've still got factory supported drivers sprinkled throughout the 3 Aston Martins. Corvette aren't allowed a works car, much to their chagrin. So that's where the single car. And Porsche always have drivers that they sprinkle among their customer teams. It's not that different, other than the fact that we don't have. Actually, there were 5, weren't there? 5 works cars last year. 2 Porsches, 2 Ferraris, and a Corvette. Look, whatever anybody thinks, celebrate the fact that we've had GTE. Celebrate the fact that some of the drivers have gone on to Porsches and to Porsche 963s and to some of the other hypercars, as we were discussing earlier on. And by the way, the full entry, FIAWEC.com, it's all there. It's all official. There's quite a lot of TBAs, particularly in LMP2 and the GT. But that, Nick, is quite a lot of that will be finance related.
Yeah, and I think there's some people also who are being held back, certainly in the hypercar, because they want to make an announcement that Barry's driving for X. So, for example, I think we all know who the other 2 Jota drivers are, but we'll allow them to announce that.
And Jota, of course, do have their 2 car, although not with the drivers we expect to see in the 963 when that arrives. Look, the basis of this is that there's going to be 36, 38 cars. It might not be the same 36, 38 cars all season. It's a varied entry in all 3 classes. There's excitement, there's interest in each of those 3 classes. Watch it, listen to it. We'll have full coverage across the year here on the Radio Show Limited network of channels with audio coverage, dedicated audio coverage, free and without blocks. It's going to be a great season, and Le Mans will have more cars. Midweek Motorsport, Series 18, Episode 1, 18. I know.
Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year to you all. It's Nick and John in Dubai. We're already in tomorrow as we get ready for the Creventic 24 hours.
You've still got no work to do until the day after, though.
Hey, you say that. There's the welcome party tomorrow night, mate. That's you know,
work.
that's not a piece of cake. That there might be cake actually. Where would you like to go next, Tim?
Do you remember the 90s?
Oh, I remember. Well, do you know, it's a bit like the 60s, isn't it? If you remember the 90s, were you really in the 90s?
I remember the 90s. Very pivotal decade for me. Started it young, free and single. Finished it married with a child.
Excellent. Well, in that case, you'll remember superstar DJ Carl Cox.
Vaguely, yes.
I think he's done more since the 90s, though, hasn't he?
He was massive in the 90s.
Really?
Yes.
He wasn't as big
Late
as...
90s.
Well, I was going to say, we never had him at the club that I worked at. We were all Norman Cook and people like that.
Yes. But he was probably up there with Pete Tong and Judge Jules.
Who wasn't a judge, and he's not called Jules.
No.
Why are you talking about 90s music, people who played records?
What, superstar DJ Carl Cox?
Superstar DJ. Here we go.
Because he's launching a race team.
He's launching an Extreme E team.
In fact, he launched it this morning.
That's not a race team.
Stop it. Look, what do we know about Extreme E? Extreme E is about getting eyes on and getting, and in fairness, the names on the cars from the team owners are just as important as the drivers, aren't they?
Did you watch any minutes of season 2 of Extreme E? Did you know it was ever on, or did you occasionally see a report saying it happened the previous weekend and gone, really? Because that was me in season 2.
Well, you know, because we've talked about it on this program before, that yes, I did, because I wanted to see if the coverage had developed, and it hasn't. It should never ever be covered live. Really, it needs to be edited like British touring cars were in the heyday of British touring cars in Super Touring.
Like any rallycross should be.
Yes,
'Cause that's
rallycross.
what it is. It's rallycross.
It is rallycross. It's rallycross. But you can get away with doing rallycross live now, Tim, because they can turn the cars around so quickly. You can't do that with Extreme E. And that downtime in between each of the races is what kills it as a live televised sport.
Is that because they're all in a queue waiting to get charged up on the M1?
Oh, he's so cynical, isn't he? Anyway, he is. We don't know who his drivers are yet, but Q, I am absolutely certain. Lots of puns and cliches about people being on the ones and twos, and that's a new record for the Carl Cox team. And there's a bit of needle here.
Very good. Yeah, it's not,
and we've amplified the action.
It's not revs, it's beats per minute.
Yes, I like that. I like that. All right, Tim, move on, please.
Well, we're staying with E.
Are we?
Because he is good.
That is very 90s, isn't it? Let's be honest. I'm sure
that was a bit earlier in the 90s.
Did you see? I could pull a handbrake on before I say stuff like that. Sorry, Tim. Go ahead.
Because this weekend in Mexico is the first round of the third generation of Formula E.
And interestingly, John, it's all about their handbrake that they can't pull on.
Well, yes, because there's been some very concerning incidents. Part of the Gen 3 car is that the traditional friction brakes that were on the back of the car have been deleted, and all the braking now is done by regen. And there's been a couple of failures in those systems where the failsafe has not worked either.
What happens is, if the car shuts down, you lose all retardation on the rear end. So all you've got is the front, which effectively, and I'll give you an example. Do you remember Lewis Hamilton's start in Baku 18 months ago, where all he had was front? Effectively, you've got instant lockup and you're not in control of anything, and you hit things very hard. And that's what you get because they've only got 100% front brakes. And
do you remember if you're on your, as a child, on your pushback in your bike and you're cycling downhill very hard and you use your front brakes only?
Yes. Well, you go across the handlebars. That's...
Yeah.
Say, hello, gravel.
This is what's going to happen.
I don't think they're actually going to go off and get flicked out of the car, but that'd be very wacky races, wouldn't it? But this
all goes back to the fact that there are now two separate powertrains, one for the front axle, one for the rear axle.
Yeah.
So they've got more than double the power and 60 kilograms less weight. So these cars are going to be much faster, but they will have issues slowing down. And the tyres.
Oh yes, the
Hankook.
Yeah.
Big step. This is actually, I've spoken to the guys at Hankook. Had a long chat with them at Kuwait, actually, at the end of last year in the Creventic series. This is a really, really important move for Hankook, and they are using this. This is a proper technology transfer. Whatever you think about Formula E, full battery powered cars are going to be around for a little while, even though their resale values are dropping like a stone at the moment, apparently, bizarrely. Don't understand that one myself because you can't get them. But anyway, by the by, Hankook are using Formula E as a massive showcase for their range of specialist BEV, battery electric vehicle tyres. And you know what? If it works for them, fair play to them. They're supporting motorsport. They've supported all kinds of motorsport down through the years, rallying, TCR, endurance racing, of course, we're closely involved with. They are launching new tyres based on this. And whatever you think about Formula E, if that's how it's being used in this case, more power to that elbow and to Hankook's elbow.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, just go back to general. I assume Tim, you wanted to talk generally about Formula E Gen 3.
I'll talk about the sporting regulation changes, Nick.
Well, the cars are completely different. They look like Toblerone triangle racers. As you said, they got 200 horsepower more. They were supposed to do super fast pit stop recharging, but that's been scrapped for this year. What appears to have happened, I think if we can sum it all up, is they brought out Gen 3, which is quite a big advance, and they've not had enough time to test it properly. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to say this, I actually quite like Formula E. I think it's got problems, but they were solving them slowly last year, I thought. I am actually worried for this event. I am worried for this event because the cars are not sorted.
And they are very, very quick. Very, very quick.
320 kilometres an hour.
That's 200 miles an hour. That's very quick. Hello to Sean Randall. Can't think of a better way to spend a cold wet Wednesday than listening to Midweek Motorsport while scanning a few memories that I've forgotten I had.
It's not wet here.
No, it's not. It's dark, but not wet. Brody. Hello, Brody. Hello. Seems to have a Alpha joining his live. Yeah, that looks like an Alpha Mito that he's bought. Actually, that looks like an Alpha Mito, some kind of quadrifolio-esque thing type. That looks quite nice. And it's red, which is the right colour for an Alpha. Hello to Patrick Dron. First spectatorment of 2023. Happy New Year. To him, it is Series 18, Episode 1. Tim Gray, where would you... Oh, can I have one quick word? Actually, I forgot when we were talking about WEC. Can I have one quick word about some sporting regs, by the way?
Go on, then.
No, yes, absolutely. You sent that email to me earlier, yes.
Well, in the new sporting regs, the teams are not allowed to talk about BOP and the effect that it's having on their car, whether it's going faster or slower, under pain of having results changed potentially after the event.
It's bringing the sport into disrepute so every single interview we've ever done after Saturday qualifying, where they go, well, BOP's not right. Yeah, well, I'm not happy with the BOP. Well, we might get a bit of a break. They're not allowed now. They'll get fines and stuff, but you cannot. It's quite draconian actually. Read it. I mean, obviously that's the thing now, isn't it? FIA like a few draconian decrees. That's hard to say fast. But
This time of the morning.
it's yeah. I mean, it's really weird. You are not allowed in any way to criticise, comment, or even comment. Working.
I'm not sure. Yeah, okay. I sort of understand it in one hand. When I was working for WEC TV many years ago with LMP1H, it was suggested that we might not talk about the three different systems that Porsche, Toyota, and had. And I said, well, you won't have to if you've got decent racing. And anyway, even if we do talk about it, you're talking about it with three different answers to the same question. It's a positive, and they're all going to have pluses and minuses and strengths and weaknesses. I think it might be taking it a little bit too far. Frankly, they're not allowed to talk about. I don't see that the bulletins are going to stop coming out. So we, as the press and covering the events, will know that car A, manufacturer A, has had a ride height change or half a litre of fuel difference.
They just want it not to be the focus of every single race report.
Yeah, no, from the team, it's the teams. They can't stop anybody else talking about it, and I accept that. There is one other regulation that I want to talk about here that really tickled me this week.
Go on.
And this was to a competitor that I nearly threw out of a major international competition many years ago, which is a whole different story. And this is a 30-minute time penalty that was enacted on Carlos Sainz in the Dakar Rally because his co-driver was wearing the wrong wristwatch. Yes, this is true.
Was this a sponsor issue?
You are not allowed to wear any wristwatch in the Dakar Rally unless it's from their timing sponsor, Rebellion. Now, they're very expensive watches.
They're very expensive.
I think the cheapest one's about $8,000 UK. Now, there is a reason for this. And so I'm trying to be, play both sides. They don't want people with GPS watches on and things like that where they can, cheat on where they are and use additional navigation, which is fine. However, poor Carlos Sainz, his co-driver had an old Casio D100 or something that he was using the countdown on for various things, had completely forgotten about this regulation. They got a half an hour penalty. Didn't matter, the 10 hours down already from earlier on. But read the regulations. If you, by the way, have a better penalty applied, bizarre penalty applied at Specutainment, is where we can go. Tim, where?
I mean, we didn't really finish, because Nick never answered my question about the sporting regulation changes for Formula E, so I'll just summarise those. There's no fan boost anymore.
Yay! It could be a world championship almost then.
And races run to distance, not time.
Yeah, I don't understand that, because that time thing was quite a good idea.
Yes,
So that's
until a
1 +
safety
1.
car came out.
And then you had overtime.
Which was also good. That was fine. It was very understandable.
Yeah. So, well, okay. Moving on.
Let's do some Formula One.
Hooray! How much time have we got to fill?
He's just walking up half the hotel.
Don't worry, they wouldn't have gone to bed yet. It's only 1 a.m. I suppose the big story that we need to cover off quickly first is Christian Horner the cat?
The cat?
Yeah.
He's been around since 2005. What is the cat, Tim?
As in part of the cat and mouse double act on season 3 of Masked Singer.
Oh,
Because all
really?
the clues are that
Him and Jerry.
that Jerry is the mouse.
I don't see Jerry as mousy at all, do you?
No.
Well, if he is the cat, I take he's naked underneath that because he's got a big career. Being, he's posed, it's tastefully nude, didn't he, in his earlier days?
Tastefully.
Tastefully. Darren Turner, we're looking at you.
The big problem is though that if he is entered into the Masked Singer, if he's unmasked, he's just going to moan, isn't he, about how it's not fair and how the other costumes are better than his and they spent too much, and if he spent too much in accident, he spent it on sandwiches, and it's going to be an absolute nightmare of whinging.
Well, if you saw Ghost in week 1, they didn't spend anything on that costume. It's basically a sheet with 2 felt eyes on it.
It was an anniversary of Christian Horner being appointed as team principal of Red Bull this week.
Yes.
2005.
2005. Okay, so yeah, okay.
That brings us on to some other Red Bull appointments, because earlier today, Red Bull on their website posted a story about Seb Montoya joining the Red Bull Junior team, and then they took it down again.
He was.
Why did they take it down again? Because there's a whole item about it on an AN other site.
Yes, wasn't there? But they published it before their own embargo. They also put up a story about Enzo Fittipaldi joining the Red Bull Junior team.
Take it down again.
Which is still down, last time I checked. And it also mentioned that Enzo Fittipaldi this year is going to be racing in Formula 2 for Carlin, which hasn't been announced yet either.
Someone's had a bit of an unfortunate pressing the send button, haven't they?
They have, yes.
We're going to ask Seb Montoya about that this weekend because he's racing in the Formula Regional at Dubai Autodrome.
Lovely.
He was the third best of the high-tech cars today in, I think, 21st or 22nd position.
And he's going to be racing sports cars this year.
Again, he's raced sports cars already. He raced in IMSA with his dad. In LMP2.
So let's move on to the Formula One story that kind of overhangs from last week when we didn't have a show. Because there have been some more developments on it. And this is Andretti Cadillac accusing you of being selfish, Nick.
What, me personally? What, Nick Damon himself?
You and everyone in Formula One.
Oh, I would like to point out I'm not associating myself with those groups. No. So basically, the timeline of this is Mohammed bin Suleiman, the president of the FIA, who, as you know, who I have very little time for, and everything he's done so far, personally, I think has been detrimental and in some ways a little bit dictatorial. I think let's go for that one as probably the best way of putting it. Actually,
not that there's no history of that in Formula One, in fairness, and head of the FIA.
Yeah, but I just kind of felt happier when it was a son of a fascist anyway. But on a serious point, he actually then issued a personal Twitter statement saying that he was a favour of an FIA Twitter statement saying that they were going to encourage applications for new entrants, which was fine. And everyone went, okay, fine, right? We 100% behind that because personally, I believe we need more than 10 teams.
Right. Now, let's just remember the backstory to this is Andretti, Michael, and Andretti Mario have been campaigning behind the scenes for quite a long time to get an F1 team. They were going to buy Sauber, they didn't get that. Various other bits and pieces were going to go on. They were basically told you can't come to F1 by the teams and Form and one or two other people. You can't come to F1 because you've got nothing to offer. Now, if you had a manufacturer, then that would be different. So they've managed to persuade, and depending on how you measure it, the biggest or the second biggest motor manufacturer in the world in General Motors to get on board. Yeah,
it was a little bit of a, it was quite, go away and get a manufacturer. No, don't get a manufacturer. This is brilliant. We've got rid of them. And they came back with General Motors, which a little bit kind of, to be honest. And obviously, Ben Sliman knew this was happening because the announcement for Andretti was the following day. Coming back with the Cadillac brand, and there's been some fantastic comments from the, let's call it Drive to Survive people who just said, Cadillac, they just make land barges. And I'm thinking, you don't quite know the recent history of Cadillac, do you? You know, they don't know about the fact that the Cadillac actually, I think, has got 3 of the top 10 road and track performance cars in the last release. So absolutely.
They're not going to build the engine anyway. They're going to have a Renault engine. They've already done a deal for the Renault engine.
Initially.
And then they're going to go to a Honda engine.
And now they're using that against them as well, you see, because it's so what's basically happened now is Andretti has turned up and has effectively overcome the objection. So what F1 now is doing is having more objection. Now,
isn't that the definition of trolling?
Well, near enough. But basically what happened is it's quite interesting because F1 came out with a statement that F1 properly, Liberty F1 came out.
This is not the FIA. No, this is F1.
Liberty F1 came out and said, so that, yes, that's great. You can ask for new teams, but obviously it has to go through us as well. Quite neutral, really, kind of statement of fact, neither positive, certainly not positive, but then again, not negative either, just stating the facts. And then 2 days later, we then had Ben Sliman from his personal account going, well, everyone's against it. It's not fair. Quite frankly, you should be much more positive about the whole thing. Because obviously happening is under the line, all the F1 teams are having a bit of a brief against Andretti because they're worried about, well, it's money, isn't it? It's the theoretical.
The cake is so big, and at the moment, there's 10 slices. They don't want any more slices, do they?
It's a really weird situation because let's be honest. Yeah, we've done this for 17 seasons. This is season 17 start, isn't it? Yeah, 1701. Happy New Year.
1801. This is
1801. Happy New Year. So, but for 15 of those seasons, if you were in F1, you were losing money basically. Yeah, what was the old joke? What's the easy way to make a small fortune in F1? Start with a big fortune. But suddenly over the last couple of years, you can actually make money out of F1. It's profitable, and the teams from being worthless to just worth what the CAD machines were worth and now have an absolute intrinsic value, and that intrinsic value is going up and up and up. Therefore, the franchise value, if you think about it, is going up. So add an extra franchise that theoretically dilutes what you can get. Now, as we all know, we talked about it many times. There is a $200 million dilution fund entry fee.
So that's a buy-in, basically. Think of this as playing poker. Yeah. It's a $200 million buy-in,
which is $20 million each. But that was set based on the fact that when the Concord Agreement was signed, Williams had just been sold for $178 million. So it's 3 years ago. They're now saying that because F1 Drive to Survive, 23 races, everyone's making money, a cost cap, for the franchise buying cost should now be significantly more. Well, it's quite interesting. They quote the fact about this, but apparently Seattle recently got themselves a expansion franchise for the NHL, National Hockey League. So National Hockey League, which is, I suppose, what, the third biggest sport in the States, or fourth biggest, I suppose. It's basketball, football, and then you've got a toss-up between baseball and hockey, haven't you? And they paid $635 million for that expansion for an NHL team. So F1 say, well, I'm sorry, we think that our expansion team should be worth a lot more. And that's now the argument. It's come down to cash. They don't care a jot whether Andretti. They don't care an iota about whether it's GM or if it's Skoda or anybody. They only want them if they're going to get a huge amount of money. So what they're trying to do is get a agreement that they get more money. And of course, the concept is that Andretti won't enter to 2026. 2026 is, of course, the new Concord agreement. So they're kind of saying, well, yeah, they can, if we get more money, they can come in. I personally, and this is Nick Damon's view, think that this push against expansionism is absolutely wrong. There should be 12 teams. Yes, 200 million to me is too much. It should be within the FIA's gift to allow entry of a team. And you are all now making money at F1, which you never were before. So grow up.
The buy-in fee is effectively free money for the teams that are there already. They would argue, I'm sure, that would be to offset any changes in how much they got for an 11th or 12th team. By the same token, they're saying, people are saying, well, they're not going to be any good anyway, so what's the point of them being there? I see that as having cake and trying to eat it, because either they're not going to be any good, so they won't be taking money in terms of the points standings, or they will be very good and adding to the show, and therefore they will be getting money. You can't have it both ways, can you?
No, and the other great thing they come up with, they said, what's going to happen, right, is Blogs & Co. are going to buy in for $200 million. They're going to just spend a piffling amount and be rubbish, 100 million, and then they're going to sell this franchise for a massive profit. That's the other thing they're worried about, apparently. And you're sitting there going, fair enough if it was certain people in the past.
There's nothing stopping any of the existing teams from also doing this if they wanted.
I know. I mean, apparently it's now come up that Audi paid 600 million for Sauber, and that's now the thing. Well, that's what the buy-in should be. But you're thinking, well, that's not,
because that includes facilities and a wind tunnel and experience and staff and history.
Exactly. I know. This is the point. But
it's the difference between buying a going concern in the high street, fitted out completely, and an empty shop.
Can you buy history, John?
It's on the Dewey Decimal System. You certainly can in any bookshop. But no, I mean, John's completely correct. I mean, this is the thing.
Reputation. All right, I'll change it. If you can't buy history, you can buy reputation, Tim, can't you?
It's all about money, as always. None of these have a sporting issue. Personally, we need more teams in. The log jam of drivers is too much. We need a couple of extra drivers. Obviously, it would help to have another American team. It's where the big expanse is.
6 races in the Americas next year. 6 races in the Americas.
It's, we are the European centricness of the championship is fading as we go to a 3 hemisphere effective championship, and eventually it'll all even up and they all have the same amount of races. East, West, and Central is European, and I don't understand what teams do. I mean, it's postulating and that sort of thing, but yeah, I don't know. I hope it'll happen, and then of course we do hear other teams in the wings, but not with such backing.
What won't they be able to do in 2024, even if they did get an entry?
I don't know. Enter? They're not ready to get going?
2024. They won't be able to have Matteo Binotto as their team principal.
What,
is he still on gardening leave?
His gardening leave has been extended.
Fantastic.
So he's not allowed to join any other F1 outfit or any entity linked to Formula One.
Did I also see as well that there's been a new regulation put in since we did our last show last year that senior Formula One figures aren't allowed to go to teams either within a certain amount of time, Nick?
Yeah, for a year. You can't leave the FIA and join a team within a year. That's just to stop.
That only happened twice last season,
Yeah, but it's more to stop it's one of those things where he's just stopping rumours and gossip, because there is no real evidence that ever that works.
What's Adrian Fernandez said to Sergio Perez?
Stop driving slower than Max Verstappen.
Yes. Who is the new Williams Driver Academy member?
Don't know.
Franco Colapinto.
Is it? Okay, fair enough. Missed that one.
What is happening at the Bahrain Formula One circuit this weekend?
An exciting tea dance?
Very close.
A fun run round the circuit?
No, it's indoor.
Indoor?
Yeah.
Indoor karting. They have an indoor karting arena. They're doing some World Championship.
It's darts. They're
It's
hosting
not.
a World Championship darts event.
No way.
Mm-hmm. How much money does Formula One want to get from Las Vegas?
I thought you were going to say from the darts. That would be all down to arrows, Team Arrows, that, wouldn't it?
But the answer is it wants to get all the money in the world. That's the amount of money it wants to get.
What's the number in its head that it's looking for?
What, as a profit
Yes.
this year?
Mhm.
200 million.
$500
million.
million. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're 100. Oh, go, well done. You have the greed of Liberty F1 in your mind.
That's forward planning and logistics, mate.
They want to make $500,000 year one with all the setup costs.
Yeah.
Setup costs will always be there because it's a street race.
Yeah, but there's more. They've purchased $90 million worth of land and things like that this year.
Who is a ambassador with Dior?
Charles Leclerc.
Charles Leclerc, I go for smelling nice, Charles.
You'd think, wouldn't you? It's not.
Carlos Sainz.
It's
Well,
not
the other
Carlos
French driver.
Sainz. It's not a French
Pierre
driver.
Gasly?
It's not Pierre Gasly.
It's not?
No.
Max Verstappen then.
It's not Max Verstappen. You can't imagine Max Verstappen signing for any fashion house.
Max
surely.
Verstappen might be a good spokesperson for caravans and Old Spice. That's about it.
All right, who is it then? Stop giggling.
It's Zhou Guanyu.
Is it?
Yes.
Fair enough. Well, and of course there's a chance. There's a good chance now he might get his Grand Prix back.
There's
Because
no
the Chinese
chance.
Grand Prix wants to be reinstated. Now they've opened back up again.
Yeah.
They reckon that by April everyone will have had it and been infected in China, and then they'll be able to have the race. That's what they want.
Just 38 million people have it.
88 million apparently. I mean, it's not nothing to be happy about or laugh about, but it's
The
if you go,
population of
that's
China is like
worth.
nearly 2 billion. So.
Okay, so moving on.
Some lovely pictures on his Instagram account of him
I'm sure.
modelling
Time.
a selection of Dior. Well, in fact, the same Dior outfit. He might have changed
Several
the
times.
trousers in different locations. There's one of him on a pink sofa. There's one of him with a pink car. There's one of him with a pink car and a blue car. There's one of him with a different
hang on.
pink car.
There's a lot of pink there. Does that mean he's going to be snaffled by a Cadillac? Because if they do not launch their car to Natalie Cole's pink Cadillac, I am going to be very disappointed.
I think that the car on the right in picture 3 is a Cadillac. But I can only,
There you go.
I can only see the
1957,
very
like
rear
a Bel
of
Air
it.
or something.
You've heard it.
That's a Chevy Bel
That was a
Air.
Chevy, by the way. Yes.
Oh, but it was General Motors, so that's fine.
Yep. Okay. Different part thereof. You're listening to Midweek Motorsport, Series 18, Episode 1.
Midweek Motorsport. Half time. And while we swap ends, here's what's coming up.
Well, the first of a new series continues. Coming up, we will have a comprehensive look at our first action of 2023. It is, of course, the 24-hour series and the Hankook 24 Hours of Dubai. Nick Damon and I already here. The rest of the team joining us. We'll have more of your tweets, please, on @Specutainment. Tim will say Happy New Year several more times. I'm absolutely certain.
Happy New
We'll
Year.
start. And there you go. I like being right. We'll start hour 2 with our big interview. And we've got Parker Thompson on the line. He's going to be a Lexus driver in 2023.
Midweek Motorsport on RadioLeMans.com.
Well, I'm delighted to say that joining us on the first episode of Season 18 here on Midweek Motorsport. Yeah, no, 18. Don't even get me started on that. Is the 2022 Porsche Carrera Cup North America champion, Parker Thompson. Parker, first of all, Happy New Year, sir. How are you?
John, thank you so much for having me on. Happy New Year to you.
Parker, it's this interview has been in the planning for a little while, and it's fair to say we were hoping to speak to you closely after you confirmed the championship. We had the Night of Champions at Petit Le Mans weekend. We've got an awful lot to talk about, not least the fact that you're going to be driving for Vasser Sullivan in IMSA in 2023. I think that's fair to say you haven't had a clear lap getting to that.
No.
Because that is not what I was expecting to talk to you about. Now, no names, no pack drill on this, but this is not what potentially you were expecting. Give us a little bit of a précis of what your quote-unquote off-season has been like so far, particularly leading up to Christmas, because it wasn't the Christmas present you wanted from the FIA driver committee, was it?
No, you're right. It has not been a clear lap since the checkered flag fell at Petit Le Mans. There's been a lot of traffic.
Listen. Actually, before I even get into that, and before we get, congratulations on your championship win, hard fought win. You came from not a position of dominance to win the championship. And first of all, we should, because we haven't talked to you about this because of various other things, and we'll get to those in a minute. Give me a little bit of a rundown on your 2022 season and how important that has been for your career.
Oh, it was the biggest triumph of my career. And honestly, I think it's the biggest life accomplishment I've had. I know, it's only racing in circles, but when you've been doing it for almost your entire life, it means more to me than almost anybody can know. And to get the monkey off my back, we've had that talk, John. Mm-hmm. The amount of championship battles I've been in over the course of my career, to finally sew one up and know that we can do it, and to finish one out strong with the championship trophy, it means the world to me. And to do it with a team, a one-car team with JDX, I think is it's pretty neat.
And that championship, I know Porsche Carrera Cup North America is a fairly young championship, but it's in its previous iterations, it was always very competitive. We now got a full pro category at the top of that, and Jeremy and I will put our hands up and say we weren't sure whether that would work. My goodness, it's worked, and my goodness, it's attracted some phenomenal talent, Parker.
Yeah, across the world, you've got Carrera Cups. I think are making a name for themselves as they train assassins in racing, and North America, I think, has flown under the radar, but I think Porsche Motorsport North America has done a fantastic job. And I can say this, the 2022 championship, I've raced against a lot of different guys that have moved on to IndyCar and above, and of course in sports cars. And I think the championship in 2022 is the most competitive I've ever experienced.
Oh man, it swung one way or another, and anybody who watched it on IMSA.tv or on IMSA Radio on our video channels around the world will know how it went one way or the other. The guys at the sharp end of the field, obviously you and Kai van Berlo and the rest of the youngsters there, and you're all young drivers. Absolutely. For me, it absolutely made right the decision to make the pro category. And, when did you think you were in a chance for the championship?
Well, we were just reminiscing over this over Christmas, because I had sent out a few gifts to a few team members at JDX, and one of them got back to me, and we had a big conversation. And I remember distinctly my engineer at Toronto telling me, well, that's it then. I think that might be our championship over. And I remember telling him, this is not over. Like, we have to keep fighting. The gist of him was, let's just go for wins and see what happens. And I said, I don't want to go for wins just to see what happens. If I'm not going to risk myself in the car to go for wins if we don't get the big trophy at the end. And then everything, it's that momentum. And it's funny, I'm sure many other race car drivers can relate, but you cannot buy momentum. For whatever reason, it's such a strange mistress when it comes and when it goes. And finally it came to me at the perfect time. And I always say this, that 3/4 of the way through any championship is the most critical time to get everything to come together.
100%. In some ways, Parker, was the fact that, your engineer, the team, maybe in the back of your mind, even you were going, all right, let's just take every race as it comes now because that's all we can do. Does that take the pressure off a little bit? Because when we talked earlier in the season in 2022, and even before the season started, you were very much thinking, right, this is it. I've committed to this championship. I know what this means, and I know particularly what it means if I win this championship. So when the championship is looking slightly further away down the road, does that in some ways take a wee bit of the pressure off?
It's funny you bring this up, and the one thing I didn't do in 2022 was start thinking about 2023 during the season. And it sounds funny, and I'm sure there's other people that have driven or competed at a high level that are thinking this way, but my career has depended on me finding a ride the year after every single year. Mm-hmm. And I think it's actually hurt my performances over the years.
Interesting. Because
I start, going, okay, maybe this isn't the year, but I've got to find something else for next year. And this is the first year that I didn't care about 2023. I could honestly.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I honestly think that is what the key to unlocking the extra performance at the end of the year was because, this is going to segue into our next conversation. Not thinking about 2023 actually made 2023 come together as easy as it was. And I've never had a deal done before a season has ended. And 2022, I had a deal done before the season had ended going into the last race.
Well, okay, so you win the championship in phenomenal circumstances, and a championship that was really heavily contested again this year. Then you've got this opportunity. Now, you and I have talked about this off air, and this is not for me to say, and you don't need to say who it was with and what, but you've got an opportunity, a Porsche opportunity, to move forward in 2023. You were a very, very happy lad with your very lovely Tag Heuer connected watch when I was talking to you at the Night of Champions at Petit Le Mans weekend. And as far as I was concerned, that was all going forward. And like you said, I've got something sorted. I'm moving forward. My career's moving forward. And then what happened?
Well, then Tuesday happened.
So this was Friday night we're talking about here.
Yep. So I enjoyed being the champion for a whole 4.5 days. And that was when I had caught wind of a few rumors coming in that I may be under subject to be bumped to gold through the FIA. And it's so funny because at that time I thought, that's not too big of a deal. I understood that it might change a few things, but I didn't understand the full ramifications of that until I got the dreaded email. And I'm sure there's a few race car drivers out there that know exactly what I'm talking about. And I don't know. I'm in the U.S., obviously on Eastern time, so I don't know if maybe it's meant to come out on Friday morning for everybody over the pond. But I got the email at 11:30 at night, and I did not get a wink of sleep that night as that email congratulated me that I would be gold for 2023.
And I presume, Parker, that your deal for 2023 as it stood right then was dependent on you still being a silver driver, which generally speaking, Carrera Cup North America last year and indeed in previous iterations, it wasn't a Carrera Cup, it was a Cup Challenge in fairness in previous years, but that hasn't automatically made a gold driver rating.
Right. So definitely a big surprise because even though the announcements from the FIA about ratifying the system had already come out, I think there was more than a few of us that did our due diligence and our homework to kind of see how that would change the championship. And to my best knowledge, the gold rating wasn't going to be on the table. But that's motorsports. And listen, I am not the first driver, and I won't be the last that has to go through the system. there's a reason that system is there, and it does give young drivers an opportunity.
But you're still a young driver, Parker. We should say that. You, as I speak to you now, you're 24 years old. You are a career driver, and there will be people listening to go, well, hang on, he's a career driver. He wants to progress. Surely getting to gold must be a great thing. But your deal was absolutely, which I'll say that you don't have to reply to this necessarily, but your deal, which would have been put you in WeatherTech. This year now, 2023, that was dependent on you still being a silver, correct?
Yes,
okay.
Dependent.
Okay.
And just to be clear, most opportunities for someone coming out of a championship where it's a sprint championship, you don't do pit stops. I mean, that was probably the biggest argument in all of this is, if I'm gold, I'm going up against factory drivers that have done more pit stops than they know what to do with. And to date, I have never actually pulled into a box in a race, went up on the jacks, changed my tires, and went back out.
So hang on. So I've done more pit stops in endurance racing than you have?
Yes. I had never done, besides a couple stints in IMSA Prototype Challenge where you've got a minimum stop time. You can kind of take your time. I have never done a live pit stop.
Okay, that's very, very. This is a conversation you and I need to have the next time we talk about how many pit stops I've done and had to haul myself out of a car, etc. All right, so let's put everything else to one side because we don't want to get necessarily political. We don't necessarily have to get pick sides on these things. That is the way of the world. How do you then go to the FIA and say, I'm not sure about this? What's the procedure? Is there an appeals procedure, Parker?
Yes. So you've got 2 weeks from the date you get the email to put in a formal appeal. And I'm sure you could go on the website right now, FIA.com, and look up the appeal process. And it doesn't really give you, it's not like a homework essay for school. There's no real outline as to what they look at.
Okay.
It's just, you have to make sure it's factual. It has to be backed up by data, and it's at your discretion to prove one way or the other what category you belong in.
Wow. Okay. So obviously you had to set that in motion fairly quickly. But when we're talking about October, November, that's not given your potential drive for 2023 a lot of time, and people won't hang around, Parker.
So it's an interesting situation, and a lot of it is circumstantial. Like I said, I'm not the first guy to go through this, and I won't be the last. But when the ratings come out, it's an intriguing time because they're before a lot of the championships are finished. But
yes.
If you're racing in America, it's the week of our championship, Petit Le Mans finishing. So even just the timeline is really tough for a North American racing in Carrera Cup, because a week after you finish your championship, you get those ratings out, and depending on where you finish in that championship, can change what your next year looks like. But the problem with that is, if you've already got talks in the works, you do not have a lot of the time to pivot. And any race car driver knows October and November are when the deals happen. Really, I would say October is probably the month.
That's just so annoying. So you've just told me, hurrah, I don't have to worry about 2023. I've got something sorted. And then all of a sudden, that's not the case because your circumstances have changed. All right, let's cut to the chase, because you're making a long story, and I presume very many sleepless nights from you, short. You did get your driver rating pushed back down to silver. By then, that Porsche drive had evaporated, and you had to look elsewhere. So tell us the good news, Parker.
Well, the good news is, after about a month and a half of tossing and turning and figuring out how I was going to continue my motorsports career, we heard back from the FIA that I won the appeal process, which I have to say this. I know it's a tough question to ask, but I really have to thank IMSA for what they did, because it wasn't just me appealing, and there was a couple of us, Kai Van Berlo being one, Rasmus Lind in the U.S. There was a few guys that the IMSA really stepped up for and said, hey, these guys, I know it's the ratifying year, I know we've changed the rules, but I felt like they handled it correctly. And I do feel like the FIA handled it correctly. We submitted an appeal. They took the time to look at it, and they got back to us.
Fair play. Mm-hmm.
The only problem is in that, call it, the 2 week submitting time, and then there was another 2.5 to 3 weeks before we heard back. That really pushed it back into contract season. Mm-hmm. And I already succumbed to injury on moving forward as a gold. I was doing everything I could to find a drive as a gold driver, which for a guy that's never done pit stops is it's a tough ask. But we get the news that I'm back to silver, and it's kind of just, I think if you ask any race car driver, a career is built on not only being talented, but the right place at the right time.
Oh, yes.
And lo and behold, one man's loss is another man's gain in this. And Vassar Sullivan, along with Lexus, we're looking for that final piece to the puzzle for the number 12 car in order to be competitive. And a lot of that is reliant on a handy silver. And within about a week, we realized that this was probably going to be the best place for my career to grow competitively. And
brilliant.
And as you know, I would say in GT3 racing, when you look at who's putting resources in and who has kind of the scope for the future, I think it's a great home for me, and they have treated me great from the start. So there you have it, the 30 for 30.
Yeah. Oh, if only we were always on ESPN like that, Parker. Yeah. Gotta say, you're taking this very well, but the opportunity you've identified there and you've been able to take puts you in a car that is competitive for victories in its class, potentially even overall. We saw an AM class car win overall at Petit Le Mans, of course, in the shape of Gradient, and giving you the opportunity to do, let's be honest, the Rolex 24. 12 hours of Sebring, the Mobil 1 12 hours of Sebring, sailing 6 hours of the Glen, and Motul Petit Le Mans. So at the very least, you're going to be doing all those endurance races. That gives you the opportunity to learn about multi-class endurance racing, which for your career right now, Parker, is exactly what you need, isn't it? It's
vital. And that's, to be honest, it's kind of ironic that the problems I had in the off season are stemming from the fact that I think the grid and everybody in IMSA knows that I can drive a race car fast. That was never the question after winning the 2022 Carrera Cup Championship. But there's so many facets of tools you need to have if you want to be successful in endurance racing that it's all unknown. I mean, when we talk about fuel saving, brake saving, there's just so many different things that will have to be proven for me in order to have a career in endurance racing. So yes, this gives me 4 of the biggest races in North America to finally prove what I know, but everybody else needs the box ticked.
We should say, first of all, well done to Vassar Sullivan for recognising your talent. And I'm quite happy to say that to Sully and to Jimmy when I say them. They obviously watch the developmental series within IMSA as well. So you winning that championship last year was clearly important there. I presume that's not to say that you've slammed the door on Porsche either. A new manufacturer to work with for sure, but Porsche gave you that opportunity. That single manufacturer championship gave you that opportunity to get your name in front of Jimmy Vassar and Sully to get into that Lexus. Exactly, and it comes down, John. It was circumstantial, but at the same time, I'm just so happy for the opportunity. Right. I had to find my way onto the grid in WeatherTech, and through circumstance, unfortunately, with Porsche, that didn't work out. But that's not to say the door's not open. I'm not a guy that tries to burn bridges as he crosses them. And it was never Porsche's fault either, and never their intention to leave you hanging there.
No, and like I said, there was so many variables that went into this off season that really are at nobody's control. But I have to say this, first off, my hat is off to Porsche for how they've kind of handled everything with the last month. But I'm relishing in the opportunity with Lexus, and really that's where my focus is. They didn't come in and just say, this is a year we're going to take you away. They came in and said, this is a home, and if you do right by us, we're going to do right by you. And that's exactly where I want to be.
Have you driven the car yet?
I got my first laps behind the RCF at Daytona. I want to say right before Christmas there, January 18th, we did a day.
Mm-hmm. And right, okay, so full house GT3 car. I know how good the 992 Carrera Cubs cars are, but they're not a full house GT3 car. You've got a front engine car, albeit almost a mid-engine front engine car, because that V8 is pushed so far back in the chassis. Initial thoughts, Parker, about the car? They've worked very hard down through the years in order to keep the back tyres under that car, down through potentially double stinting the Michelin tyres. What were your initial thoughts?
Well, my initial thoughts are, yes, the Carrera Cup car is fast, but man, a GT3, it's funny, that extra couple inches in the front that gets to be lowered makes the world of a difference. So it was just cool to get behind some GTD machinery. And that really, the first 10 laps were just about, I couldn't believe that the kink was flat, because that would have been a giant lift in anything else I've ever driven.
Excellent.
The bus stop was unbelievably quick. And then, coming to terms with the car, you've nailed it on the head. Obviously, the rear tires, it's got so much horsepower and a lot of weight at the front, which is kind of opposite to what I'm used to. Mm-hmm. It was a little bit of an adjustment, but I have to say, within the 26 laps I got, everything came to me pretty quick. And by the end of the day, I think there was a few people that were surprised.
Were you surprised?
Not really. And I don't want that to come off the wrong way.
No, I know that. But you're a racing driver. You've got to be... Look, your best critic is you. And you've got to be honest with yourself. And that's why I asked you that question.
If I look at my career training in one make series, I've known that every single year I've been able to win in whatever category I was racing at in that time. So I think if Lexus gives me enough time behind the wheel of that RCF, I don't think there's a reason why there won't be a Canadian flag at the top of some time charts this year.
That'll make a lot of people very, very happy. And you get to be on track with the new GTP cars as well. Try not to just go wow every time you see them. They are going to be coming past you, let's be honest. But I know from driving in multi-class racing, when cool cars are going past, I'm not a pro racing driver. I just want to, look at that. That looks fantastic. Oh, hang on a second. I should be braking and changing down here. So try not to do that and enjoy it. Let's hope this is the start of something big for you, Parker. You deserve it. Congrats on last year's Porsche Carrera Cup North America victory. Is it just going to be those 4 races? Is the opportunity to see you in something else, either with Lexus or somebody else across the rest of the IMSA season?
Well, the goal is obviously to do more races next year. But for IMSA, it's going to be definitely in a Lexus product. So it'll be the 4 races. And if there's an opening, obviously, I hope that nobody on the team gets hurt like what happened last year. But if that happens, I'll definitely be ready and make sure my helmet is in hand. Yeah,
good point. Always good point. Be ready for everything. Parker, it was a joy to watch you race last year. It was a fantastic championship victory for you. I'm genuinely sorry that you've had to go through what you've gone through this off-season. But I think it says an awful lot about you, your attitude to racing, as to where you find yourself right now. And I think that'll stand you in good stead for 2023. Good luck and fair winds, my friend.
John, I can't thank you enough. And don't feel too sorry for me. It's a dream spot to be in a Lexus for the endurance rounds.
Oh,
so.
I'm not feeling sorry about you now. I'm only talking about the 2 weeks leading up to Christmas. That's it. Nowadays, I'm very, very envious about you driving a full house works GT3 car. Well done, mate. And can we speak to you during the year? And we'll catch up with you at Daytona at the Raw, surely.
By all means, I'd love to speak to you.
Thanks very much to Parker Thompson there. This week's big interview. And I'm sure we'll hear more from him over the course of the season. Just need to correct some things that John said earlier about the DJ Judge Jules, whose real name is actually Jules.
He's not a judge, though.
No, but he does have a law degree from the London School of Economics.
He's not a judge.
No, but
I think his name's Julian, actually, not Jules. Julius. There you go. Known as Jules.
Known as Jules.
Okay, fine. I'll give you that one.
But yeah, he has a law degree, so he could be a judge.
That's why. Okay, fine. It was always the joke in the J. Nobody said that Norman Cook was fat boy, although he was slim, I suppose.
Where next, John?
Time to look forward to our first live coverage of 2023 as tradition dictates. And the reason why we are in the UAE at the moment, it is the Creventic 24-hour series and the Hankook 24 Hours of Dubai. We have the full team on hand. Johnny, Bruce, Joe, Nick, Phil and me, bringing you all 24 hours. Very important change to make a note of, Nick, before we even start about who's on the star-studded entry list.
Don't tune in Friday.
No, you can.
Oh, yes, it is. Don't expect the race Friday.
Right. Yes. Friday we have coverage of the day and the night qualifying, and some of the support races as well. There are 3 support races: Clio Cup and 2 single-seater FAE. F4 UAE rather, and Formula Regional. They're both single-seater championship. We'll have some coverage for those. The vision for those will be on their own site, but of course everything for Creventic will be on the 24H series site as well as on radio-show.co.uk. So we couldn't do this last year because the proclamation was made just a little bit too late for Creventic to change all of their timings. But this is about Dubai in particular becoming a more global business centre.
Yeah, the weekends of Arab nations and the European nation were decided by their religions. Obviously, we had Sunday as our holy day, and then luckily we managed to get Saturday off as well to party. Whereas in this region of the country, it was originally Thursday and Friday, with Friday being the holy day. Well, they changed it about not that long ago, about 25 years ago, to Friday and Saturday. But as they want to bring themselves in more to the global financial markets, it's nothing to do with days off. It's everything to do with lining up the global financial markets. Dubai and the whole of the UAE, but not Kuwait. No, Kuwait, we went there a few weeks ago, was still running a Friday, Saturday weekend. But the UAE now has a Saturday and Sunday weekend. And if you're lucky enough to work for the government, you also get Friday afternoon off.
Yeah, and it's all about when the holy day starts on Friday afternoon. For those, particularly those locals for whom that is an important piece of their worship, of course. So that means we have daytime and nighttime qualifying on the Friday, as I said. Saturday and Sunday is the race. Now, that's going to work much better for some people, those of you in Europe. For those of you in Australia, further round, then unfortunately that's going to push the end of the race through a little bit into Monday morning. But, swings and, if you will, roundabouts.
No, I think you're fine. I think it's finishing at 3. I think the furthest ahead any part of Australia is from the UAE is 8 hours. It never goes past 11.
Okay.
But it is better for the Europeans because the race isn't starting at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Friday.
Yes.
It's now starting on a Saturday, so you can't go to the shops with your wife, partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it may be.
Okay. A star-studded list, as I mentioned. We've got, by my very quick calculations, 54 cars. Now, let's talk about that straight away. Not as many as we've had. I mean, we started nearly 100 cars in the past. I've always maintained, and I'll be interested to hear what Phil Anson has to say about this when we get him on Friday. I think 60 possibly 65 is probably as many as you want. So 54 is maybe one or two light from the organisers' point of view, but there's no make weights in there, and hopefully that means we have fewer Code 60s and more racing.
Well, this is the 12th time we cover this event, and
out of 18 editions, this is the 18th edition this weekend.
So we've been here for 11 of those 12. Obviously, one weren't able to go because of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. But the interesting thing is this is by far the lowest number of cars that have entered. You said we had 100, we had 90, we had 80s. I think the next lowest in my mind is about 72. However, I don't think this is any indication of a lack of popularity or a lessening of importance. In fact, I think it's almost the reverse. I think this race is becoming more significant. And what has happened is it's meant that the teams who are entering are bigger, better, more prepared. And in a way, what's really disappeared is I don't know how to put this politely. I'll say lower end teams. You know what I mean by that? The slower cars.
Well, it started, of course, with the removal of the A-class cars, as we would have called them in those days. Anything sub 2 litre was taken out. So things like the Clio Cup cars and one or two of the other cars. Now that only followed what was going on at things like VLN, NLS as it is now, Nürburgring 24. There are other events where those cars can take place, even Bathurst actually, and we'll be talking about Bathurst. If you weren't listening earlier on, we'll be talking about Bathurst with Crilsey next week, entry list for that. Just out, their 6-hour race tends to now favour those more clubman-orientated events. And I say that without any detriment at all to the guys who put so much work in. I think the breakdown of the grid, Nick, tells you all you need to know. Only 7 TCE entries in the Touring Car Endurance Series, 5 of which are TCRs and 2 of which are the TCX BMWs. Mm-hmm. By far, the biggest single class is GT3, with 10 Pros, 9 Pro-Ams and 2 Ams, backed up, interestingly, by 18 992 class cars, 7 in the Pro and 11 in the Am. By the way, there's 5 GT4s and 3 GTXs. That's how my fundamental arithmetic has got us to 54. It is becoming somewhat of a GT3-centric race.
Yeah, I think so. I think that the race has got, let's say, quicker. It's moved up the scale. I mean, the interesting thing, as you pointed out, John, is we've got an absolute phalanx of Porsches now, both in pure GT3 form and a lot of them obviously in the Super Cup form as well. And it does appear that the more gentleman-orientated teams are no longer bringing a TCR car, which was very popular 2 seasons ago. That's dropped off a lot. They're not perhaps bringing some of the more esoteric GT4 cars. They're going, we'll get a Porsche, because there are so many 992s available now, because they've had a few years in their respective championships. They're available. They're not being used. They have a very good reliability record, and of course a very good spares package and support. And I don't know the finance of this, but my guess is it's probably actually quite a cost-effective way of doing it, because the car has such intrinsic value outside of what it's doing here. So you use it, you sell it. So it is becoming it's a very different focus in the fact that the average, if you took what I would think is very interesting, if you took the average speed of the entire field, okay, it's way faster than it was last year, and it's way faster than the year before, because everyone's moving up a sector, moving up a chunk. The gentleman drivers have moved up one, and so you've ended up with what ended up being an incredibly impressive set of cars and teams. But I'll be honest with you, perhaps missing a little bit of the Garagista magic.
Hasn't that been a theme recently as well? Let's take a look at some of the headlines. Start off with GT3. The 2022 winners are back, with Dries van Teur, Mohamed Saud, Fayed El Saud and Axel Jeffries. They're back. We've got Earl Bamber. And I would have lost money on this, making his debut in 24H Series racing. Really? His brother's raced before. Raced here before. He's with Grove Racing, who are doing a bit of prep before they go to Bathurst 12 Hours, the Liquid Moly Bathurst 12 Hours in a few weeks' time. Earl Bamber, by the way, 2017 World Endurance Champion. We've got the newly confirmed and crowned Continent's Trophy GT winners CP Racing, reigning European champion Phoenix Racing here this weekend. Hubert Haupt, who's won here 3 times, as has Khaled Al Kabezi. They're here as well. We've mentioned Axel Jeffries defending, and of course one Valentino Rossi making his competitive debut as a BMW Works factory driver. Another one who's using this race as a warm-up. I mean, and that's just, I'm only talking there about the GT3 category. We'll go through the categories at the moment. There are so many stories in this field. New cars, returning champions, big names. I'm really excited about this. I know Bradley is as well. Bradley and I had a long chat about this recently. And he's, I think, as excited about this race as he is about seeing the new GTP cars at Daytona.
Yeah, I mean, this is the point. When you shuffle up the speed and quality of the teams, you shuffle up the speed and the quality of the drivers. And there is a plethora of really interesting teams. Now, the thing, of course, is one thing you have to remember is that the strength of any Creventic team is their weakest link. Because all these teams have to have an amateur running for a couple of hours.
Mm-hmm. At least, yeah.
No, 2 hours. It's 2 hours in this race. You have to run 2 hours.
Right.
And it's often how you use those theoretically slower drivers depends where you come in the race. So if you look at some of these team lineups and you think that's not fair sides, doesn't necessarily mean that way. You've got to look at all it's all the drivers, what all the drivers can do, because there's maximum race times. Now, obviously, yeah, we're going to turn around and we're going to absolutely, because we are inveterate motorsport fans, we're going to look no further than number 46, which is, we've got Valentino Rossi. Now, the thing I particularly like about that is actually he's sharing the car with a BMW Junior who's been promoted to BMW Senior now, which is Max Hess, who I know because he's a radio control car racer. And the last time I was speaking to him, I was interviewing him doing some RC racing in Italy. You know, so it's we saw him at Nürburgring. So it's an amazing, confirmed. I noticed that Maxime Martin's in the team. Last time I spoke to Maxime, he wasn't telling us where he was going from Petit Le Mans. So it's and then in that team, I'll get shot down by the audience. There's a guy called Timothy Whale. No idea who he is at all. But he's
not going to be a rabbit, is he?
But he's the guy who's the key. He's the am.
Yeah.
He is the key to the whole. Okay, Nick, what are you talking about? No, those 2 hours are the key differentiator when you've got so many high quality drivers in the rest of the teams.
So, with that in mind, then let me just quickly rattle through some of these cars. So, Abu Dhabi Racing by HRT. Which has Khaled El Kabezi in it. He's their am. Now, Khaled El Kabezi is a good am. And he's got Hubert Haupt in there, semi-pro. Sebastian Bode, semi-pro. Jules Gounon, yes. Then you look at the first of Team WRT cars. Mohamed Saud Fahed Al Saud. He's the am who won last year. Mm-hmm. Semi-pros of Diego Chacha and Jean-Baptiste Simonauer. Yes. Jens Klingman and Dries Van Tour. Yes. And yes. Mm. Then go to Grove Racing. Earl Bamber we've mentioned, he's the pro. Stephen Grove is the am. Stephen Grove's a great am. Anton de Pasquale and Brenton Grove, all semi-pros, all from the Antipodes. Haas, RT, Audi. Maxime Soulier, Mathieu Dutrier, Benjamin Mazatis, who's a semi-pro, and Frederick Vifiche, and their am is Olivier Bertels. Now, I don't even need to go any further. Surely, Nick, that underlines the quality of this field.
Yeah, I mean, being a 24-hour race, of course, you have more drivers to choose from. So we're getting more people we've heard of and more big names. But what's going to happen here, and this is the really exciting thing, John, is that somebody we haven't mentioned will be a star.
Yeah.
It'll happen. I remember it was how many years ago it was Pipo Durrani. I can't remember how many. I didn't know. You knew him. Yeah. I didn't know him. Yeah. And he just turned up here, and I can't remember. It was so many years ago. 14, 15, he turned up. He was an absolute star. And he's going somewhere. And well, obviously, his career's been pretty good ever since. But yeah, I didn't know from Adam when he turned up here. And there'll be somebody again. You'll just pick up, and this guy will put in a couple of hours of just superb racing and pull the team from where it shouldn't be.
Yeah. And it'll be one of those Trustwell's, what does he call them, hero stints, doesn't he? I mean, nice spread between BMW, Porsche, Audi, Ferrari, Pierre Caffer, Elliot Earhart, Christopher Jons and Michael Doppelmayr. There again, Michael Doppelmayr is the am.
They're in pro-am, so they got. Yes. But the thing to remember about Phoenix Racing, they're not a person who follows the rest of the series. I know, obviously, it's very heavily weighted, much like many road races, to the first event of the year. But Phoenix Racing were the speed class of the field through the European season. Mm-hmm. Now, points-wise, I think CP got the better of them through some clever tactics and a bit of luck. But if you actually said who's going to be the fastest car going round, it was Phoenix with the and they did play their amateur brilliantly.
Yes,
they played. I remember they put him at the start of both halves of Spa.
Yes,
because they knew there was going to be problems.
Yes,
so he actually ended up running a lot of the time under a safety car. It still counts as his time, and it still is 2 hours. Yeah. So I can't convert series that quickly under a coast. It's not actually 100% not a safety car. It was a full course yellow. But yeah, so they so it's really interesting. It's those tactics coming in, and you say, but is it the case with 54 cars will have less code 60s?
The Pro-Am is interesting. Those 10 Pro cars are mega. We've got Pulsar Motorsport with the all Danish entry, the two Pulsars, Roland and Christian, Kasper Jensen and Gustav Berg as well. MP Motorsport are in there. Heart of Racing, now not running an Aston Martin, running Mercedes. We'll see them at Daytona with a couple of Aston Martin Vantages. But Ian James, along with Ross Gunn, they've driven together before. Roman De Angelis has driven with them, although has moved on to Prastis new as a Porsche. Came from Porsche and then drove, and then Gray Newell as well. So two AMs, a semi-pro and a pro to that. They're running a GT3 AMG. Anything with Ian James and Ross Gunn will be very, very quick in it, and Roman De Angelis as well, by the way, former Porsche North America front runner. I'm liking the look of this Pro-Am category, not the least because we have the return after what can only be described as a disappointing 18 months or so for Herbeth Motorsport with Ralph Bohn, Daniel Ollerman, Robert Renauer and Alfred Renauer. We'll never know which one of those two are in the car at the same time. It is the number 91. It is a GT3R. Now, these, I think all of the Porsches in GT3, and I should have looked at this before I started this sentence, are all the old version now, the 911 Series 2. Yes, they are. So no new 992s yet, but welcome back to Herbeth Motorsport, and they will be absolutely expecting something better than they've had, as I say, for the last pretty much year and a half.
Yeah, not only they're back with the same big four as have really been defined the series for several years, but it's been a bit of a poor performance recently. One thing I want to say, just above them in the 48 Salaton by Cox Racing is the man who actually, in many ways, to me, summed up the first 3 or 4 years of our coverage of this event, which is Peter Cox.
Yes.
The outspoken, always interview-worthy Dutchman, and I think he probably had more minutes on our shows during those early years in the Chromatic series than anyone else. And he's with his daughter, so it's a father-daughter and then a few more Dutch people.
He's done that before, I think.
Yeah, he did last year. And Tom Boonen, so they've got one Belgian. I assume he's obviously a Flemish-speaking Belgian.
Tom Boonen is the former road cycling champion, isn't he? So, yeah, that's an interesting one. Outside of the...
Can I just...
Yeah, go on.
You know how you want to make a little bit of a name for yourself in predictions?
Yes.
I'm going to predict... I'm just trying to find the car. Here we go. Right, this is the team you need to watch.
Okay.
And we haven't mentioned them.
Right.
And it's the 32 Team GP Elite.
Right.
Which is Lucas Gronveld, Jesse van Hoyk, Dan van Hoyk and Max van Splunteren, because they were blooming brilliant at Kuwait.
Lucas Gronveld is a sim racer, isn't he?
All of them are quick. They're all down as semi-pro, but they are all really, really quick. So they've got no stars in there, but 4 of them, with that orange Porsche, my feeling is that they will be significantly higher than people who are just perusing the entry list will think.
Well, the Van Hoyk brothers, they were super quick, and in fact that car should have won Kuwait, but it was swings and roundabouts and the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune between CP ended up in the gravel, losing the lead. They went through, and then they had still an unexplained driveline problem, gearbox, or as Nick says, a driveline problem. It's a bright orange Porsche, not dissimilar to the Camels, Red Camel Jordan NL, but that's a Cup car, of course, whereas that is a full GT3. I want to talk very quickly before we move on, and I'm very cognizant that we're taking up time, and time is not our friend here, about the second of the Herberth cars, which is an all-US driven car, but entered by Herberth Motorsport. It's another 911 991.2. Jason Hart and Elliot Skier are the two semi-pros, and they've got a lot of experience in racing, and I'm pretty certain Jason Hart has driven BMW in the past, and we've seen him in this series, as has Elliot, I think. Adam Adelson, you might not know, but he's raced in Carrera Cup in the States, and he very kindly donated his normal number 48 to Jimmy Johnson when Jimmy Johnson raced at Indianapolis in the Porsche Sports Car Together Fest. And as he's a big Jimmy Johnson fan, Adam Adelson, lovely lad, a very good driver as well. He's an AM Plus, as is Seth Lucas, the other driver in that car. And Jimmy Johnson made a point of going down and having a chat with him, and signed Adam's car, which I thought was the mark of the man. They'll have a great time. There are two full AM cars which run slightly different regulations in terms of their fuelling and their effectively balance of performance. Neither of which I think you can count out for a good overall result. One of them, of course not, because it's CP Racing, and it is the usual lineup of Charles Putman, Charles Esplanade, with Joe Foster, Shane Lewis, and Phil Quaife added to that. Shane Lewis first competed in this event 10 years ago now. So there's a milestone there. They're coming off the back of a brilliant season, Nick, and they've got big momentum. They've had a couple of race victories last year and won the Championship of the Continent with the win in Kuwait.
Yeah, I mean, I think they are down as a GT3, and my feeling is that they will be completely on a par with the Pro-Ams. I think they'll be racing the Pro-Ams. The fact is that we've seen this in a number of previous iterations of this championship, where they do have this enough entries for a big split that the full pro teams do just have a little bit more over a few hours to just pull away from the Pro-Ams. But yeah, in the Pro-Am Championship, the Pro-Am race, I'm sure whilst we're not really racing them, I'm sure that CP will be up there and knocking on the door.
Yeah, and the other car provides a little more. In the AM category, it provides a little more variety. It's a McLaren 720S GT3 of 7T6, which is James Cottingham and Andrew Gilbert, both UK-based drivers. It's under the Union flag as an entry. Fran Rueda is the semi-pro from Portugal, I think Fran is, isn't he? Spain, excuse me, yes. Matthias Weibor, who's the AM. Now, Matthias is very, very good driver. So expect to see those guys up the field as well. Two GTX Vortex.
Yeah, disappointing. Supposed to be, I was under the impression we were going to get the new car. They're building a new car, but it says Vortex 1.0, so it's the old car, but perhaps they'll bring one new one.
And the Razzoon More Than Racing KTM Crossbow guys, if we know anything about those, is if they have to completely replace every single nut, bolt, washer and screw on that car, they will do. I think they won our Spirit of Endurance at Kuwait, didn't they?
They did. I mean, it's a good car. It's a quick car. It's a very quick car. If it runs, it's much faster than these Mark 1 Vortexes. The Vortex will need their Mark 2s to win this. But as tends to be the way, sometimes the crossbows aren't quite as 24-hour-y as they should be.
Full engine and gearbox change on that car at Kuwait in something under 4 hours, I seem to remember from memory. All right, huge Porsche class, 18 of them, no time to go through them all. We have the Breukers family outing, to which Fabian Danz is the second AM, along with father Ivo Breukers in that car. The 909, obviously running in its bright orange. Watch out for the Veely Motors by EB Motors car. They're sort of transitioning into Porsche racing, aren't they?
They've gone up a Porsche because they're now because in Kuwait they were in the last generation Cup car, and now they've got one of the new generation Cup cars. Only 3 of them. I think that's the first. Obviously, sometimes we get people added. This is actually today's list, but sometimes we get people added on the Thursday or the Friday. But it looks like they're going to have 3 guys running it. But they're Veely Motors, very, very good team.
Very good. As are Fark Auto Tech, FAT.
Who won those? It was 18 they won with the GT3?
Two cars for the Swiss flagged team with a variety of drivers. Rabdan Motorsport is all UAE driver lineup. That's great to see, with Saif Al-Meri heading up that team, I would probably say, although they're all rated as semi-pro. MRS GT with a 992 Cup car as well. Nico Verdonk as the semi-pro in that now, ahead of another 4 drivers for MRS GT. Another returning team, Dual Racing by Toro Verde. However, this is effectively the Mutrans Racing. Ramsey, Nabil and Sami back together again in a GT3 Cup 992 car with Phil Keane, formerly the Stig. He's their pro in that car, and they're the 3 AMs. They're going to have the time of their life. Watch out for the start number 995.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to have the Mutrans back. I mean, obviously, they are, sort of, they're locals, and they're also sort of, have spent last time in the UK as well. So it's the Dual Racing, who of course was always their entrant when they were running, and when they won the whole overall championship with a Cupra. Was it in those days? Was it actually just called a Leon Cupra in those days? But yeah, the Mutrans. I'm sure one of the good news about that is there is at least one that will take some of the heavy lifting of the commentary from you at some point.
Yes, that's a fair point. Well made. 2 Luxembourger entries from Seb Lajou Racing by Duo Racing. Now they're in the 992 AM category, of which I think I said there was 11 of those. Yes, there are, and this is going to be a good battle within the class. Huber Motorsport have got an entry to that. Gies Bessem, Harry Hilders, Bob Herber and Mark van der Aar have got the NKPP by HRT Performance, another former Cupra team in there. QMMF by HRT Thorea. Now QMMF is the Qatar Motorcycle and Motorsport Federation. We saw them in Kuwait, and they were very pleased with themselves, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, they did a great job. They managed to get. I think they were slightly benefiting. In fact, their cars were there already, so they got a bit more practice than some of the others. But they certainly drove particularly well. They've got a couple of Europeans. I think it's different this time, I think, because they've got Daniel Roos and Julian Hanses in the car, and they have one of the Ericssons and somebody else in previous. But yeah, so they were good drivers, and on, well, not exactly home turf, but it's certainly closer to home turf. Yeah, just an hour and a 380.
We talk, don't we, a lot about the standard of drivers, but the standard of teams. HRT Performance, 2 cars in the AM category there, including the American Greg Gorski in one of those. Speed Lover. With Simon Balkan and Stephen Pallet, the semi-pro in that car. MRS with another couple of cars further down that AM category as well, with Mark Henrique in one of those cars as the semi-pro. Well, he's got plenty of experience behind him as well. So keep an eye out for that. As I said, there's 18 cars in 992. 11 of them are AMs, 7 are the pro cars. GT4, nice to see 5 cars on GT4 and some good names there as well.
Yeah, got our third family outing after the Mutrons and the Broikers. Now the Gothers, Roald, the dad, and Oliver and Benji. And then, of course, they're...
he's part of the family, Stuart, now,
Stuart,
isn't he?
Yeah, who's the mentor, and Jordan Groger, who has raced with Stuart and Roald for years. So that's very much... And they're in the Mercedes AMG GT4, which I believe they were also in last year. Mm-hmm. So, yes, there's a lot going on there. I noticed we've got James Kay in the 438 Simpsons Motorsport with Keith Kasuki, the Papua New Guinea driver, of course, who has recovered from that serious burns he had a few years ago. I had a chat with James Kay actually in the departure lounge of Kuwait, and he was talking about how price-wise, it's all about finances, it's much cheaper now to run an M4 GT4 than a TCR car.
And the point about that is that's a brand new car. That's a new Gen 2 BMW M4 GT4. A similar car for Century Motorsport. That's the 429 and the 438. The RHC Jurgensen Strom by Century car is the older version of that car. Darren Jorgensen, Brett Strom, Nathan Freak, Danny von Dongen and Jerome Bleekemolen. You look at that in GT4 and honestly, that would grace any category.
Yeah, I mean, you only need 2 decent cars to make a race, and they've got 5. So, looking good. Yeah, and obviously it's great to see Harold back.
Yeah, always hardest working man in motorsport, isn't he? We'll drive every weekend. Another family outing with Leonidas and Ria Lucas, with Bradley Ellis and Charles Hollings in Dragon Racing. They're as local could be, based pretty much at the circuit in their GT4 Mercedes. TCR, as I said, only 7 entries in TCE, but great to see the French flag team 700 miles back with Marc Girard and Thierry Chikondla, Ali in that car, among other drivers. Wolf Power with 2, AC Motorsport with 2, and then the 2 Team Zorg Rennsport cars. Now, the Team Zorg Rennsport TCXs in Kuwait were 2 locally sourced BMW M2s. They've gone to Caymans here.
No, that wasn't it. That was Bonk Motorsport, wasn't it?
No, that was Bonk. You're right. I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. It was.
But that Monlau aren't entered.
Yes, correct.
That's a surprise. They've won everything for the last year. But I have noticed, of course, we've got Rob Huff back again.
2015, 16 World Touring Car Champion. Yeah, maybe a little bit earlier than that. So that's another World Champion that we've got there. So we've got 7 World Championships on 2 wheels. That's obviously, that makes...
9 more champions.
Yes, because so that's 4.5 actual World Championships because he was only on 2 wheels. We've got Earl Bamber, World Champion, and Rob Huff, World Champion. I mean, pick the bones out of that. 54, as we said, might not be. In fact, is not the biggest that we've had to talk about. But Nick and I sitting here right now, I can't pick a winner out of pretty much any of those classes, to be honest.
No, because it's going to be about. Absolutely, it's going to be about application and operation, because there's 10, 12 cars that can win, provided it goes their way. They don't need a major sprint; they just need the day to go their way. And if you drop the ball, you're in trouble.
All of our coverage this weekend is live in sound and vision. The schedule's already up on the foot of the homepage at radio-show.co.uk, and we'll start on Friday with some daytime and some nighttime qualifying, as well as a bit of nighttime practice and the support races. Slight change to what's going on. We'll explain all of that when we get to Friday. Thank you very much for listening tonight, particularly to our guest Parker Thompson. We wish him well, and next week we will be at Daytona with a big catch-up with Shea Adam of all the IMSA news. We'll have Crailsey on with some Bathurst news, as well as we're building up to the Raw. But that's next Wednesday. For this weekend, make sure you're locked in to the 24 hours, the Hankook 24 hours of Dubai. Thanks to Tim Gray up in London. There's no time to explain. The llama is back on track.
This program is a Radio Show Limited production. For more, subscribe to Midweek Motorsport wherever you get your podcasts.